and welcome to Little Learners. In today's video we're going to be discussing behaviour outbursts and how you can deal with them. This is a topic that has been requested by quite a few of you, and so I thought it was only fair that I finally made this video. Now I think it's really important to explain what I mean when I talk about behavioural outbursts. This refers to negative behaviour, and it can mean very disruptive behaviour, very upsetting behaviour. There are many reasons that a child might have a behavioural outburst. It's very important to understand the reason behind it. Now, for some children, you may already know that they are prone to having behavioural outbursts because of additional needs. If this is the case, the teacher, the SENCO, and even possibly the parent should be meeting to discuss this and talk about how it's going to be dealt with and the most effective ways to do so. However, children without additional needs can also have behavioural outbursts for many different reasons. Sensory overload, being too tired, not being able to communicate properly, which we'll get onto in a moment, just to name a few reasons. Sometimes, as the teacher or even as the parent, you can't get to the bottom of what the reason is behind this behaviour straight away because the child is just too upset. This behavioural outburst can manifest itself in different ways, but it can include shouting, screaming, hitting others, hurting themselves, flopping to the floor, and just really not being able to cope with the current situation. Now, from the outside, this may just look like a child who is acting up. However, if you think about how much frustration and upset has to happen before a child gets to that point, there is always something going on behind it. Whether or not a child will have a behavioural outburst depends on a lot of different things. As I already mentioned, things like additional needs and fatigue can definitely be contributing factors. The way that this behaviour is dealt with outside of school, at home, by other caregivers is also a contributing factor. So what do you do when a child has a behavioural outburst? Well, one of the most important things as the adult is for you to remain calm. Now, you are a human being, and human beings can only take so much. If you have been dealing with this behaviour for a long time, or you're just not able to calm the child down, this can make you feel very frustrated. Now, if you start to get to the point where you're starting to feel angry, or you think you're going to lose your temper, which of course we would never want to happen, then it's really important to remove yourself from the situation, make sure the child is being appropriately supervised, and just take a moment. You might just want to step out of the classroom, you might want to go into the classroom next door to you and just say to the teacher in there, I just need a minute before I go back in and speak to them. There is no shame in doing this, even as a parent. You will be no good to the child if you start getting really cross and angry and having your own behavioural outburst. I would certainly never recommend shouting at a child. Shouting never does any good. All it does is let the child know that you have now lost control. You can certainly raise your voice in an authoritative way, but that is very different to just shouting at a child. Shouting can cause a lot more harm than good. It can scare children, it can let children know that they've got to you, which makes things worse, and it can make them more angry. Think about it, when you are frustrated about something or you are having an argument as an adult and someone else is really angry and they are arguing back with you and shouting at you, that is going to make you feel worse and more angry. So you remove yourself if you feel like you can't keep your cool. However, if you are remaining calm, the most important thing is to let the child know that they are safe and that this behaviour is not acceptable and we need to stop. In some cases, the child may need to be removed, depending on how their behavioural outburst is affecting other people. Now, I mentioned additional needs a couple of times, and if this behavioural outburst is a pattern and the behavioural outbursts can often get quite dangerous for the child, the staff around the child, or the other children, then this is something that needs to be discussed with the special educational needs coordinator and the parent, and maybe something that further training is necessary for. The child may also need additional support. So mainly when I'm talking about behavioural outbursts in this video, I'm not really referring to those more extreme cases of children with additional needs because they need to be treated on an individual basis. It's important to come down to the child's level if you can and explain to them what isn't okay. So if, for example, they have hurt someone else, or they are trying to hurt themselves, or they are screaming at the top of their lungs, you need to just very calmly explain to them that that behaviour is not acceptable, but you would like to talk to them about how they're feeling so that you can help them. Sometimes children find it really hard when they are in this very frustrated state to get out of it. So they might be crying and breathing really, really rapidly. And so one of the best things to do, I find, is to help them regulate their breathing. So I often tell them to take a deep breath, although young children don't always know what this means. So sometimes I tell them to hold their breath and then tell them to release it. Take another breath, hold your breath. And this just helps them to slow down their breathing, which makes them feel calmer and allows them then to cope with the situation a bit better. Because when they're having that kind of panic because they are so frustrated, it's really difficult for them to communicate with you. Once a child has managed to calm down a little bit, whether you've then gone out of the classroom with them or they're still in the classroom, then you can start asking them what the matter is, what has happened, unless you already know what the problem is. However, it's always important to let the child tell you in their own words. Once the child has settled a bit and has explained to you what they are upset about, if they are in the wrong, they still need to have a consequence. So for example, this may be a time out. I have a video about timeouts. You can click the card or wait until the end of this video and click the link in the description box below. It's very important then to explain to the child that I understand how you're feeling. It must be very frustrating, upsetting, whatever the situation may be. However, this behaviour is not acceptable. And so now this will happen, whatever the consequence is. One of the most important things for children is for them to feel like they are being listened to. Because a lot of the time, if they have had an argument with another child or something hasn't gone right, they can feel like everyone's going to be against them. And if they feel like you're not listening to them, but you're listening to someone else, then that is not fair. And one of the things children hate the most is to feel that things have been unjust. And so it's really, really important to show them that you are listening, but still keep your boundaries and expectations very clear. It's also very important to remember that after a behavioural outburst like this, children can feel absolutely exhausted. So trying to get them to do some work straight after that might be completely null and void. They may just need to go and sit in the corner for a moment and relax, because it really is emotionally draining. For many children, having a behavioural outburst can be quite scary, even if it's happened to them before, because it's a complete loss of control. They also may feel like the adults won't like them anymore. So even if you are very frustrated with them, or you really just don't want to deal with it again because it's happened so many times before, you don't want to let them see your frustration, because they will take that to heart and they will start thinking that you don't like them. So just make sure that you are being fair, but of course you are being firm. One of the best ways to prevent behavioural outbursts, things escalating to that point, is to give children the tools to talk about how they're feeling in the first place. This obviously doesn't happen overnight, and especially in early year settings, this can be very difficult because developmentally, children aren't necessarily equipped to do that yet. So we get children in reception who are age 4, maybe just coming to that developmental stage where they can start to compromise and start to realise that the world doesn't necessarily revolve completely around them. And so that's why in reception we really see a lot of children struggling with this concept, and that can result in behavioural outbursts. Now, I mentioned earlier that communication can be an issue. If a child has a speech or hearing problem, often that has been undiagnosed because it's quite minor, this can have an impact on the way they behave. So if a child feels like they can't verbalise what they want to say, or other people aren't understanding them, or they can't understand other people because of a hearing problem, or maybe even because of EAL, this can cause them to get very frustrated and can lead to that more exaggerated negative behaviour. If a child has a behavioural outburst in your classroom, it's really important to let their parent know after school. Just discuss it with them, tell them what happened, tell them how it was dealt with, just so that they're aware. The parent may then tell you that they've been struggling with the same thing at home, and so it may be something that you want to discuss further. There may be an additional need there that you didn't even know was there. However, in many cases, for children who do not have additional needs, behavioural outbursts are very rare, and if they do happen, you'll only see them do it once or twice. For many children, you won't necessarily see this at all. However, if you are in an early years setting that is earlier than reception, you're more likely to see it because children are having communication issues at that age because they're still not able to verbalise what they want to. I hope that has all made sense. I hope that it has helped you. If you have found this video helpful, then please give it a like. It really helps out the channel a lot. Do let me know in the comments below if you have any behaviour management tips in terms of behavioural outbursts. It's really important that we all share practice and help each other. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.